Thanks, guys. Well, somewhere between 1 in 3 to 1 in 5 children in Ireland are overweight or obese. This is a problem that increases with age, with approximately double the number of 10-year-olds overweight compared to 4 to 5-year-old children in Ireland.
But why is this, and what can we do if our own child is overweight? GP Dr. Brian Higgins joins us this morning. Hi, Brian.
Morning, Brian. How are you?
You know, it's sad that we're having this conversation about overweight children in this country, but it's a vital conversation to have. Those statistics are scary.
Those statistics are scary, and there are things that are probably getting worse every year. I don't think it's... Sad is probably not the right word. It's important that we're talking about it, and it's something that actually we have to take our emotions out of, because emotions are actually a big reason why we're here in this position.
OK, so why is it happening? Why are these figures becoming so stark, specifically with children? OK,
so it's not something that has a very kind of simple answer. And it's a in its most basic idea, kids are getting in more energy than they're expending because food is very calorie rich, and kids' hobbies now have changed from running around outside to sitting down, watching TV, playing video games. And that's a really, really simple explanation of it, but the reasons behind it are an awful lot more complicated, insofar as the food that's cheap and readily available is really high in calories, really high in sugars, and foods are directly marketed to children. If you watch even TV ads on a Saturday and Sunday morning, there's really, really colourful ads, usually about food and calorie-rich cereals and snacks that obviously children want to have. So kids are being directly marketed, and then parents want to get stuff to keep the kids happy. And it's a really, really complicated,
but it's not
difficult
just
situation.
It's not about indulging the kids necessarily, although we will get to that in a minute. You know, life has evolved as we know it in this country. So even one generation back, you may well have had one parent in the home, usually the mother, cooking the beautiful home-cooked meals. Now, a lot of people have, you know, two family incomes. And so when you're home at 6 o'clock in the evening, you know, reaching for the convenience food, it's called convenience food for a reason. We don't necessarily think this will be bad or good for our children, but it's a means to get food into them. And mothers and fathers too, I'm sure, worry that we don't feed our children.
Absolutely. And the thing is, when you're buying the food, the cheaper stuff tends to have a lot more additives in it. So even if you look at the ingredient list and something like some of the fish fingers compared to the others, there can be a lot of hidden sugars and fats.
And those sugars are really dangerous, aren't they?
Yeah, sugar is the thing. Sugar is becoming more and more the issue. Initially, when people were looking at fat, like children and adults getting fat, they always focused on fat. But a lot of the time, it's actually the sugar content in food, which is a big issue, because sugars are really, really energy-rich food source.
Can I just address as well the activity issue? And I want to get on to how we address it and how we identify it. But the activity issue is another one of those kind of sociological things where we used to be let run out, you know, and there was a less of a sort of sense of danger, if you like, and there's not as much freedom. People are afraid to let their kids, you know, have the freedom to run around. Is that a big issue as well?
It's a big issue. Like, I remember somebody telling me before, when they were kids, they'd go out and their mum would say, look, go outside and don't come in unless you're bleeding, which was, you know, great. Yeah. But the thing is, we have to protect our kids, but it's finding that balance of getting them involved in activities and getting them involved in sports, of having somewhere safe that they can go and run out, but still letting them go and run and be active, and kind of not, it's a terrible thing to say, but not using the television as a babysitter.
Yeah. Medically, what's the fallout from childhood obesity? What kind of illnesses are we looking at?
Well, the scariest thing, and it sounds so bad that it almost sounds unreal, but this is probably the first generation ever that has a shorter life expectancy than their parents, and that's because of obesity and the correlated cardiovascular disease that comes with it.
That's pretty stark.
Yeah, it's really, really scary. And then things that would have been diseases of adulthood, and this is focusing then on childhood obesity, diseases that would have been diseases of adulthood, such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, certain bone and orthopedic issues, are happening in teenagers as opposed to adults. And that's really, now that's something that's probably a lot more dramatic in the United States than here. But what you find is these things are happening in the US, and then the UK and Ireland are following suit.
OK, so if you are concerned, how do you identify if your child is actually overweight?
OK, so you have to ask yourself the question, and people, it's amazing actually, people really are not aware that their children are overweight. If you had a line of kids of different sizes lined up and you asked in your imagination to match your child with one of those, you'd probably match your child with a much slimmer kid than they are. So instead of just asking yourself, look, do I think they are? Get out a measuring tape and get out a scales. Measure them and then get something. There's a really good calculator online, one by the CDC, the Centre for Disease Control.
I think we've got some info on that now. There we are. The BMI calculator. So that works.
The BMI calculators, yeah. And you put in your child's sex, their date of birth, and their height and weight, and it will tell you literally in green, orange, or red.
And that's really helpful. That's really helpful. Okay, so if you have identified it, this is a really sensitive thing to address. Then you can't go, necessarily going barging in. What's the most sensitive and sensible way of addressing it over time?
So the thing is, it's over time. With children, you never actually want them to lose weight, except in really extreme circumstances. What you want to do is have a real honest conversation with the kid and with mum and dad and say, look, they're a little bit heavy for how tall they are. Let's stop them getting any heavier and let their height catch up. And it's really important.
So you communicate this to the child?
Oh, yeah.
You let them know that there is an issue here?
Depending on the age of the child, you definitely need them to be involved, but do it in a very sensitive way.
Yes, you're running into a myriad of problems there where you don't want their children, you don't want them to become self-conscious and embarrassed
especially
about
at
who
that age
are.
where they are becoming body conscious as they get closer to puberty.
Yeah, so you just have to be really sensitive about it, and you have to be aware that every mum and dad are doing their absolute best. And if you say to somebody, look, and you give out to somebody, that doesn't work, and it's not fair, because it's oftentimes people don't understand that maybe what they're doing is not the very, very best thing for their children, and it's really just about doing it as a team and re-educating them.
We had a great chat earlier on. You mentioned to me that, do you do this? And I said, oh my gosh, I do. That a lot of parents, when a child falls over and hurts themselves, will soothe them with a little treat. Have a little bit of chocolate, make you feel better. So it's small things like that, changing that treat to a bit of maybe colouring or reading their favourite book. Yeah,
exactly. Just something small, or even something exercise related. Say, look, if you're trying to get a child to do something, instead of rewarding with treats, reward with star charts, and then at the end of the week, if you've done something really, really well, either a toy or a football game with dad or something activity related, mum or dad, that's what you want. And you want to move away this sort of idea that food is what makes us happy.
And can I just quickly, Brian, because we're running out of time, in terms of addressing the activity issue, some kids just aren't into playing sports, don't have that natural compunction to go running around. Like, how do you encourage them to do something that they don't hate and they're not going to resent you for and they're not going to resist?
So you need to talk to them, find out why they hate it. It's very, very daunting for a child who's not athletic to say, look, go out there and run. And it's really small little steps, whether it's just starting off with a walk or starting off with maybe a sport they like, or maybe something like a martial art where you can build in that element of fitness with agility and stretching and mobility. Where the intensity is not very high, but can be increased over time. As opposed to soccer teams. Soccer teams are tough because if you're not very fit and you're not very fast, you're not going to get on the team. Something like rugby probably has a place for childs of all different shapes and sizes.
Well, it's been a really interesting, eye-opening chat this morning, Brian, and with any luck, we'll get those stats down.